5 murders, 5 cases that shocked America. But what happened after these murders is what makes them truly disturbing. 3 men went to prison for a crime they didn't commit. A killer confessed on camera decades later. One suspect was identified only after he had been dead for 10 years. And in another case, the man who reported the body was the one who left it there. These cases exposed shocking failures, overturned convictions, and left families waiting decades for answers. Tonight, we're looking at 5 U.S. murders so disturbing, they shook the whole country. And the most unsettling part? Finding the killer didn't always mean getting justice. Welcome back to Darkest Crimes.
What happened that night changed everything.
The 4 were stabbed with a knife, and these murders have shaken us to our very core.
Because of him, 4 beautiful, compassionate people were taken from this world.
It was overwhelming, would be an understatement.
Detectives arrested 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger.
Hey, Bryan!
Bryan, did you do it?
How are you feeling?
This is it. We got our guy.
Based upon his searches and his behavior, he seemed to know he wasn't as perfect as he thought.
How do you plead guilty or not guilty? Guilty.
That person will never leave the correctional institution unless he's in a box.
Why? That's the only real question left in this case. Everything else, who, how, when, has an answer. Why does not? It never has. It may never. Moscow, Idaho is the kind of town where nothing happens. Population under 26,000. Home to the University of Idaho. In November 2022, that changed forever. In the early hours of November 13th, 4 students, Madison Mogan, 21, Kaylee Gonkalves, 21, Zana Kernodle, 20, and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin, 20, were stabbed to death inside an off-campus rental house on King Road. The 4 had spent the evening apart, some at a food truck, others at a nearby bar, before returning home in the early morning. Around 4 a.m., a masked intruder entered through a sliding door on the lower level. Autopsies later showed the students were likely asleep when they were attacked with a fixed blade. 2 other roommates in the house survived. One told police she saw a man in black clothing and a mask leaving the house, a detail that would become one of the case's most chilling pieces of testimony.
If you hadn't attacked them in their sleep, in the middle of the night, like a pedophile, Kaylee would have kicked your ass.
For 6.5 weeks, the killer's identity was a mystery that gripped the entire country. Police faced a scene with almost no obvious leads, no forced entry damage pointing to a clear suspect. The break came from something the killer left behind, a knife sheath discarded near one of the victims, carrying a trace of male DNA. Investigators ran it through genetic genealogy databases, tracing family trees back through distant relatives until the search narrowed to one name: Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old PhD student in criminology at Washington State University, just across the state line, roughly 10 miles from the crime scene. Surveillance footage of a white Hyundai Elantra circling the neighborhood in the hours before and after the murders matched a car registered to him. He had, according to his own academic work, researched serial killers. On December 30th, 2022, nearly 7 weeks after the murders, police arrested Kohberger at his parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, where he traveled for winter break. For over 2 years, his defense team fought the DNA evidence, requested a change of venue, floated alternate theories, but never once revealed what, if anything, connected him to the victims. In June 2025, with a trial looming and the death penalty on the table, Kohberger agreed to a plea deal. On July 2nd, 2025, he pleaded guilty to all 4 murders and the burglary charge.
And then let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
Sparing himself execution, but forfeiting any right to appeal. On July 23, 2025, Judge Stephen Hippler sentenced him to 4 consecutive life terms without parole, plus 10 years for burglary, and roughly $270,000 in combined fines and civil penalties payable to the victims' families. When the judge asked if he wanted to explain why he did it, Kohberger stood, partially, and said 3 words: "I respectfully decline." Judge Hippler didn't let the silence go unanswered. "The more we struggle to seek explanation for the unexplainable," he said, "the more power and control we give to him. In my view, the time has now come to end Mr. Kohberger's 15 minutes of fame." Kaylee Goncalves' sister, Olivia, spoke at the sentencing. So did the other families.
My name is Olivia, and I am the big sister of Kaylee Gonzalez, and I was blessed to love Madison Mogan as a sister too. I'm not here today to speak in grief. I'm here to speak in truth. Because the truth is, my sister Kaylee and her best friend Maddie were not yours to take. They were not yours to study, to stalk, or to silence.
Some offering forgiveness, some describing exactly what they expected would happen to him in prison. Bryan Kohberger will spend the rest of his life there. The verdict is complete. The sentence is final. The why still doesn't have an answer. Not for the court, not for the families, not for anyone.
Potential okay, 2 missing juveniles. Abigail Joyce Williams.
Getting scared now. It's getting cold.
Liberty Rose Lynn German.
Missing, abducted, we don't know for sure.
Last seen at the High Bridge in Delphi, Indiana.
Delphi is just not one of those places where any of us ever thought that something like this would happen.
Investigators talked to him within days of the murders. He wasn't hiding, he wasn't evasive. He answered their questions and went home. It would take almost 8 years, thousands of dead-end leads, and one re-examination of old evidence to realize he'd been standing right there, blocks from the courthouse, the entire time. This is the case of Abby Williams and Libby German, and the man they came to know only as Bridge Guy. Delphi, Indiana is a small town where everybody knows everybody. On February 13th, 2017, best friends Abigail Abby Williams, 13, and Liberty Libby German, 14, skipped school for a day off and went hiking on the Monon High Bridge Trail. Libby dropped her older sister's boyfriend off at home and asked to be picked up later that afternoon. When no one came for them and the girls didn't answer their phones, family members started searching, and found chilling evidence before they found the girls themselves. Libby's phone contained a video recorded just before they disappeared, showing a man walking behind them on the bridge. Her phone had also captured an audio recording of a male voice.
Hi.
The girls' bodies were found the next day, February 14th, in a wooded area near the trail, roughly a quarter mile from the bridge. They had been killed with a bladed weapon. Despite thousands of tips and multiple composite sketches of the suspect known only as Bridge Guy, the case went cold for more than 5 years. Investigators pursued and publicly ruled out numerous suspects, some of whom faced intense online harassment based on nothing but internet speculation.
Richard Allen, you child murderer! Why did you do it?
No. They got the wrong guy. There's no way.
There are other people who were looked at for this.
Shame on you!
It's some sort of a religious sect/cult.
Shame on you, Richard!
That follow Odinism.
Shame on you, Richard Allen!
I believe they sacrificed a girl and killed another one.
And law enforcement insists no one's ever been cleared.
The break finally came from an unexpected direction. Richard Allen, a local pharmacy technician who worked just blocks from the Carroll County Courthouse, had been interviewed by police near the bridge back in 2017 and was somehow never flagged as a serious suspect until investigators re-examined old evidence years later. In October 2022, more than 5.5 years after the murders, police arrested him. A search of his home turned up a .40 caliber pistol. Forensic testing matched ejection marks on that firearm to an unfired bullet found at the crime scene between the girls' bodies. Allen's case was delayed for years by legal disputes, including a leak of crime scene evidence and the temporary removal of his original defense attorneys. His trial finally began in October 2024. A psychologist who treated Allen in prison testified that he confessed to her in April 2023, saying, "I killed Abby and Libby. I'm sorry." He described planning to assault the girls, then panicking and cutting their throats when a vehicle approached. That confession happened while Allen was in prolonged solitary confinement, and according to trial testimony, showing documented signs of psychotic symptoms at the time. That circumstance is now central to his appeal. On November 11, 2024, after 19 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Allen on all 4 counts: 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of felony murder while committing kidnapping. On December 20th, 2024, Judge Francis Gull sentenced him to the maximum: 65 years for each girl's murder, served consecutively, 130 years in total. These families will deal with your carnage forever. Allen is now housed in a prison in Oklahoma. Allen's attorneys maintain his innocence. They've appealed on 3 main grounds: that the search warrant for his home was based on a flawed affidavit, that his confession was coerced during his prolonged, documented psychological crisis in solitary confinement, and that the trial court wrongly blocked them from presenting an alternative suspect defense. The Indiana Attorney General's office has pushed back on all 3, arguing the search was valid, the confession was voluntary, and the trial was fair. Oral arguments before a 3-judge panel of the Indiana Court of Appeals are scheduled for September 21st, 2026, at the Indiana State House. As of this recording, that hearing hasn't happened yet. Richard Allen's conviction and 130-year sentence remain in effect while it's pending. 8 years to get a verdict. And even now, a panel of judges is still deciding whether that verdict was earned the right way.
One seemingly ordinary February morning, college student Laken Riley left home for her usual run around Lake Herrick. But just a few hours later, she was found with severe injuries to her head.
This morning, chilling testimony from the officer who found the body of nursing student Laken Riley.
I found it. Ma'am. Oh, I need EMS immediately. She's not breathing.
A 22-year-old nursing student laced up her shoes for a morning run on her own college campus, a trail she'd jogged 100 times before. This time, she never came home. What happened in those woods would dominate national headlines for a year, reach the halls of the White House, and help rewrite federal law before her killer's trial was even over. Laken Riley was a nursing student at Augusta University's College of Nursing, taking classes on the University of Georgia's Athens campus. On the morning of February 22, 2024, she went for a run through a wooded area near campus, a route she and countless other students used regularly. When she didn't return, her roommates called police. Officers found her body in the woods later that day. According to the indictment, Laken was confronted on the trail by a stranger, Jose Ibarra, then 26. Prosecutors alleged he asphyxiated her and struck her repeatedly with a rock, causing severe head injuries, in what they described as an attempt to sexually assault her before killing her. Ibarra's DNA was found under Laken's fingernails. Her DNA and his were found on a jacket police recovered from a trash bin in his apartment complex. Ibarra was arrested the following day and held without bond. Ibarra had entered the United States without legal authorization in September 2022 and was allowed to remain in the country while his immigration case proceeded. Laken's death, occurring during a presidential election year, became a flashpoint in the national debate over immigration enforcement, though the criminal case itself proceeded independently of the political conversation surrounding it. Ibarra waived his right to a jury trial, opting instead for a bench trial decided solely by a judge. Over 4 days in November 2024, Athens Clarke County Superior Court Judge H. Patrick Haggard heard testimony. The defense called no forensic evidence to support any alternate theory. Prosecutors called the evidence overwhelming. On November 20th, 2024, Judge Haggard found Ibarra guilty on all 10 counts.
In the state of Georgia versus Jose Antonio Ibarra, case SU 24CR0323, count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty.
Sobbing could be heard throughout the courtroom as the verdicts were read. That same day, he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, the maximum available under Georgia law. Laken's mother, Allison Phillips, urged the court to hand down the maximum sentence so that he never gets the chance to hurt anyone else ever again.
Your Honor, on February 22nd of 2024, our family and friends were given a life sentence without a chance of parole. Jose Ibarra took no pity on my scared, panicked, and struggling child. There is no end to the pain, suffering, and loss that we have experienced or will continue to endure. On that horrific day, my precious daughter was attacked, beaten, and shown no mercy.
Ibarra's attorneys weren't finished. Weeks after the conviction, they filed a motion for a new trial, arguing the verdict was contrary to law and the evidence. A judge later ordered a mental competency evaluation as part of that process. In March 2026, Judge Haggard ruled. The motion was denied. The judge found the evidence against Ibarra overwhelming. As of this recording, his conviction and life sentence stand. A morning run on her own campus, a law with her name on it, signed less than a year later, and a case that outgrew the courtroom before the courtroom was even finished with it.
How did Anna Walshe die? The crime scene reconstruction expert who helped convict Alec Murdaugh weighs in on Bryan Walshe's murder case. Plus, Luigi's looks are what's trending in true crime as the accused assassin is flashing a fist pump during his suppression hearing. We're breaking down that pose as well as the overall optics of the upcoming trial.
No body, no confession. What convicted him instead was a list, recovered from his own phone, of things a husband should never have to search for about his own wife. This is the case of Anna Walshe. Anna Walshe, 39, was a Serbian-American real estate executive living in the affluent coastal town of Cohasset with her husband Bryan and their 3 young sons. By the time Anna's employer reported her missing on January 4th, 2023, she had already been gone for 3 days. Bryan told police Anna had taken a rideshare to Boston's Logan Airport in the early hours of January 1st to catch a flight to Washington, D.C. for a work emergency. Investigators found no record of any such flight, no rideshare trip, no trace of Anna anywhere after that night. What they did find inside the couple's own home was a broken knife and blood in the basement. Bryan was arrested January 8th, 2023, initially on a charge of misleading investigators. Murder charges followed. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered internet searches, allegedly made from Bryan's own devices, in the days surrounding Anna's disappearance. How to dispose of a body, how long it takes for a body to decompose, whether dismemberment could destroy DNA evidence. Surveillance footage showed a man resembling Bryan buying cleaning supplies, a hacksaw, and a hammer at local hardware stores, then discarding heavy bags into a dumpster near their home. A search of a nearby trash processing facility turned up a hatchet, a hammer, shears, a hacksaw, a protective suit, and items belonging to Anna, including boots matching the ones she was last seen wearing, and her vaccination card. Anna's DNA was later found on several of the tools. Anna's body has never been found. Prosecutors argued Bryan stood to gain financially. He was the sole beneficiary of a $1 million life insurance policy on her life, while the marriage was reportedly under strain. Bryan was Confined to home confinement at the time, awaiting sentencing on an unrelated federal art fraud case involving forged Andy Warhol paintings. Court records suggest Anna may have been preparing to leave the marriage and relocate with the children, fearing Bryan would soon go to prison over the fraud case. Just before jury selection in late 2025, Bryan pleaded guilty to 2 lesser charges: improperly disposing of a human body and misleading a police investigation, while still denying he killed Anna.
Willfully conveying away a human body or the remains thereof in violation of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 272, Section 71. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
And have you talked to your attorneys about each of these 2 indictments?
Yes, Your Honor.
Has counsel explained the elements of each of those 2 indictments that the Commonwealth would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand each indictment?
I'm sorry, what did you?
Do you understand each indictment?
Yes, Your Honor.
His trial opened December 1st, 2025, in Norfolk Superior Court. Over 8 days, prosecutors called roughly 50 witnesses. The defense rested without calling a single one. On December 15th, 2025, the jury found Bryan Walshe guilty of first-degree murder after about 6 hours of deliberation.
As to count 1, wherein the defendant Bryan Walshe is charged with murder in the first degree, what say the jury? Is the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Guilty of what, sir?
Murder in the first degree.
Murder in the first degree. So say you, Mr. Foreperson.
I do.
A rare conviction secured without a recovered body. On December 18th, 2025, Judge Diane Fournier sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole, telling him, "Your acts in dismembering your wife's body can only be described as barbaric and incomprehensible. No body, no confession, just a search history he thought no one would ever read back to him. It was enough."
I'm Michael DeWitt Jr., managing editor at the Hampton County Guardian. And then these Murdaugh incidents began, and things haven't been quiet since then.
Attorney Alec Murdaugh said he was shot in the head while changing a tire on this road in Hampton County, South Carolina. Then police arrested 61-year-old Curtis Smith. Police say Murdaugh hired Smith to kill him.
A jury needed less than 3 hours to convict him. 3 years later, the conviction was gone. Not because new evidence proved his innocence, because of what one person did inside the courtroom itself while the trial was happening. This is the case of Alex Murdaugh, and it is century the Murdaugh name ran the legal system of South Carolina's Low Country. 3 generations of Murdaugh men served as the region's top prosecutor. Alex Murdaugh, the 4th generation, was a respected personal injury attorney, a family man, a pillar of Hampton County. On the night of June 7th, 2021, that image collapsed. Alex called 911 to report he'd found his wife, Maggie, 52, and their 22-year-old son, Paul, shot dead near the dog kennels of the family's hunting property, Moselle. Paul had been shot twice with a shotgun. Maggie had been shot 4 to 5 times with a rifle, 2 different weapons. Alex said he'd been visiting his ailing mother that evening. At first, the Murdaugh name shielded him. Investigators treated him as a grieving husband and father, not a suspect. In September 2021, Alex resigned from his own law firm amid accusations he'd embezzled millions from clients, including vulnerable families who'd hired him after tragic accidents. Days later, he was found shot in the head on the side of a rural road. He first claimed it was a random drive-by shooting. He later admitted he'd orchestrated it himself, hoping his surviving son would collect a $10 million life insurance payout after Alex's own staged death. The scheme fell apart. It exposed a decade of financial fraud that prosecutors would later argue was Alex's true motive for murder, that he killed Maggie and Paul to buy himself sympathy and delay the reckoning coming for his crimes. At trial, jurors would hear more than 12 hours of testimony about those financial crimes. Years later, that specific detail would become part of how this entire case came apart. In July 2022, Alex was indicted for the murders of his wife and son. His 6-week trial began in January 2023, drawing global media attention. Prosecutors leaned heavily on the financial evidence. The defense argued the financial crimes were irrelevant and pointed to no direct forensic link between Alex and the killings. On March 2, 2023, the jury convicted him on all counts after less than 3 hours of deliberation. The next day, Judge Clifton Newman sentenced him to 2 consecutive life terms without parole.
There are a number of counts here, a number of indictments, and you'll get an individual sentence as to each one. On indictment, GS 4727, for money laundering, the sentence is 20 years.
In November 2023, Alex separately pleaded guilty to dozens of financial crimes, drawing an additional 27 years. For a moment, this looked like it was over. For years, Alex's defense argued the trial itself was compromised. Colleton County Clerk of Court Rebecca Becky Hill was managing evidence and jury administration during the trial. She was also at the same time writing a book about the case. Jurors later reported that Hill made comments to them during the trial, telling them to watch his actions, watch him closely when Alex took the stand. On May 13, 2026, the South Carolina Supreme Court agreed this crossed a line. In a unanimous 5-0 ruling, the justices found Hill had placed her fingers on the scales of justice, denying Murdaugh his right to a fair and impartial jury. They called her conduct breathtaking, disgraceful, and unprecedented in South Carolina. The court separately found the trial judge had also erred, allowing those 12-plus hours of financial crimes testimony into a murder trial went further than necessary and created unfair prejudice. On retrial, that evidence will not be permitted. Both convictions were vacated. Here's the detail that makes this stranger. Becky Hill herself had already pleaded guilty in December 2025 to perjury and misconduct charges tied to the case. Her sentence for unraveling a double murder conviction that took 6 weeks and millions of dollars to secure 3 years of probation. South Carolina's Attorney General Alan Wilson didn't take the ruling quietly. "No one is above the law," he said, vowing to aggressively seek to retry Alex as soon as possible. Alex Murdaugh has said from the day he found their bodies that he did not kill his wife and son. "I'm innocent," he told the court at his original 2023 sentencing.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm innocent. I would never hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never hurt my son, Pawpaw.
He remains in prison right now, serving his separate, unaffected sentence for financial crimes. But on the murder charges specifically, as of this recording, Alex Murdaugh is legally presumed innocent, pending a new trial that hasn't happened yet. A jury believed the money was the motive. The conviction the jury reached no longer exists. South Carolina has to start this case over from the beginning. 5 cases, 5 verdicts, 5 moments where, on paper, the story was supposed to be over. Bryan Kohberger pleaded guilty to 4 murders. The verdict is as complete as a verdict can be. The why still isn't answered. It may never be. Alex Murdaugh was convicted, sentenced, and for 3 years, as finished as a case gets. Then the conviction itself became the subject of a new investigation, and now the case is starting over. Bryan Walshe was convicted with no body ever found. The verdict answered who. It didn't answer where. Jose Ibarra's case moved faster than any of the others, verdict to federal law in under a year. But the moment it became a law, it stopped being only Laken's story. And Richard Allen's conviction, right now, as you're watching this, is sitting in front of 3 appellate judges who are deciding whether it was ever properly earned at all. A verdict is supposed to be an ending. Not one of these 5 actually was. 2 of these cases aren't finished in the most literal sense. Alex Murdaugh is legally presumed innocent of murder, awaiting a trial that hasn't been scheduled yet. Richard Allen's conviction stands, for now, while a court decides whether it should. The question that should stay with you isn't whether the system got these cases right. It's how many verdicts everywhere else are sitting in that exact same unfinished place, closed in the news, still open in every way that actually matters.